What is going on, YouTube? Thank you for attending the live Q&A we do here at least a week. And here is Adam. Adam, are you standing?
Yes, I have installed a walking pad and standing desk. It's been 2 days now.
Okay. That freaked me out a little bit. I was like, this is a new view.
Yeah, I know. People are like calling me and be like, what the fuck? Why are you swaying? I'm like, oh, I'm
walking. You're just like floating magically.
Yep.
Well, as we always do, each and every single week, we answer as many questions as you guys have regarding the realm of bodybuilding, pharmacology, training, nutrition, you name it. We try to answer it and give you an objective standpoint on what we would do in your situation. Sometimes we can't do the best, right? Because things are architectural. So we will try to always do our best and get to as many questions as we can. But starting things off, Adam, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Like I said, just the reason I got this, just things are getting so busy. Instead of when we get steps outside and almost fall off again. So yeah, that's gonna be a recurring thing because I'm still getting used to it. But yeah, dude, just you know how it is in fucking Thailand. It's so hot you can't walk outside. Well, you can, but then you have to shower 3 times a day. I'm like,
right.
My productivity is going to shit. So I better sort this out. But yeah, it's going well. Cat's prep's going well. A lot of clients are in prep now. So I got peak week coming out my ass. And as you all know, like our peak week method is, see them what they look like. So I don't just like catch a peak week, fuck off. So it's a lot of hands-on time, but yeah, going well otherwise.
Yeah, dude, it's kind of interesting. I have a lot of competitors too right now. It seems like this is the season where things uptick. And dude, I gotta say, I just like for those who don't know who are just tuning in, Kat is Adam's significant other, and she like the past year, whatever you guys are cooking up over there, she is completely morphed into something else. Like
pull up the ones from a year ago. I think she's got just scroll down. I think actually she just a comparison from when she came to Thailand. I mean, I
don't know, man. But even like just her chilling is it this?
Oh yeah, there.
Yeah.
There.
That's fucking wild. That is wild. Both 59 kgs too.
Yeah, I need to find some comparisons from a year ago and then from 2 years ago. Yeah, pretty huge changes. I mean, she responds. I mean, she just she's almost like female Ronnie Coleman. She just fucking follows the plan no matter what I give her. So in that aspect, she's really good.
Yeah, and she's like already dialed in lean for a female, not like all the way there, but like dude,
well,
crazy.
Yeah, I don't want to I don't want to say this too early, but I remember a lot of people telling me, oh, like, you're gonna need a much longer prep with her. And I was, female, you need 25, 30 weeks. And I was just like, I've prepped her enough times that she loses fat super fucking fast.
Dude, this is crazy. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Holy shit. What do you mind disclosing what she's using right now?
Of course. So right now, the one thing I've done with her is we've actually used very minimal anabolics. She's only used 35 milligrams of total Anavar for an 8-week cycle once, and a 35 milligram per week cycle titrated up there. So we start really low, like 17.5 milligrams of Primo for 8 weeks. All the anabolic exposure she's actually ever had, which is quite wild. But what I've always done, not always, but for the past years, we kept growth hormone relatively high. So she's fluctuated between 2 and 6 IUs. And in fact, moving her to 6 IUs per day really had a crazy change on her physique. Can I tell you the method of action there? I'm not too sure, but I think I have a photo which maybe we should try pull up or send to you. In the first, actually, I'll just send in the chat. But the first 5 weeks of her prep, she only lost 4 pounds, but she got significantly leaner. I'll forward these on to you. And I would attribute that to obviously one, like she was training really hard. We're making sure that she was progressively overloading. We're using refeed days strategically, but also I attribute it to the higher dose growth hormone because I know people say, oh, it's overrated, and I think for some it is. Like, if you're expecting some magical change and not putting in the work, but if you put in the work, I do think it makes a significant difference. Yeah, I just sent you a photo, and like people was like, oh, how many pounds was that loss? And I was like, that's like, it was just barely 4 pounds. And
Yeah.
that you have to consider water and glycogen weight as well. But really, what was really important with her is like, one, I do supervise her training a lot. So we really try to make sure that we are beating the logbook, so to speak, every week. Yeah, that's a 4 pound difference. And that's in
Wow.
5 weeks. But also on the I guess pharmacology side, so going back to that, I haven't used any need to do any sort of HRT testosterone there, because just on DHEA and pregnenolone, the testosterone is actually slightly above the female reference range, which was great. So she never needed any sort of form of that. She responded very well to antibiotics, even though she's only done basically 2 cycles of it. Where we found that also she responded very well to it, in the sense that she was actually getting a bit too strong on Anavar, in the sense that it was actually causing joint pain, because she was actually PRing a lot in a deficit. So we actually thought, okay, well, let me try Proviron also being DHT derivative. So we found that actually worked better for her, and there was less aggression, less, basically less strength actually, but still the same amount of gains and amounts of anabolism. And then it's basically been like low dose clenbuterol, like 20 micrograms. She'll use that most of the year. Insulin, Lantus as needed, but Humalog is something we'll keep in the pre-workout phase. Well, it's actually, let me just pull up a plan to make sure I'm not missing anything. But that is pretty much the main driver. So we try to stay away from non-viralizing compounds, because, or else not stay away. We try to leverage non-viralizing compounds, because like the whole goal with her, right, is she like really wants to do well. She wants to be competitive, but she wants to obviously keep her femininity, and she's not willing to, basically she's not willing to, masculinize herself for a pro card, that's just not for her. And, and that's why the whole approach, we try and be very conservative with the viralizing compounds and antibiotics. So yeah, I've got it up here. So yeah, basically the antibiotics she's only uses Anavar and Primo only twice at this point. So growth hormone, currently that's at 6 IU, which is just all in the PM, doing really well. We're using a bit of injectable L-carnitine, although it's very fucking painful and she does not enjoy it. And then it's just basically a little bit of T4, because basically on blood work we're finding that there was enough growth hormone to basically lower her free T4 enough that we need to supplement with like 50 micrograms of it. A bit of your Hemban, short and long-acting insulin. And then recently today, I actually gave her a bit of a GLP-1 agonist, liraglutide, just because she sticks to the plan. She has no problem with that, but she's getting really food-focused and it's distracting from her work, where she was like, Adam, I just spent 40 minutes on Chronometer playing with my days, with my meal plan to try. And I was like, okay, this is enough. Like, we're going to put you on that. And so I've included that just to basically help her focus on work. But that's it from the pharmacology side of things. Like I said, I'm not going to try to take all the credit here. It's obviously her hard work, and also she's like 5'2". She's 5 foot.
Yeah,
and responds really well. So I mean that helps a lot.
Yeah, that dude, it's crazy. And how much I must have glanced over how much Primobolan?
So Primobolan was 35 milligrams weekly.
Wow, dude, that's awesome.
Literally 5 milligrams a day. That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is, it's so nice, because like obviously you're avoiding a lot of the virilization that women get. I just did a video that published this morning in our time, tonight for your time, or last night for your time, and it was reviewing this Popeyes show that was done here in Canada, where it's natural and tested, and the girl in the wellness category was very clearly on a lot of shit, like very clearly, right? And I went onto her profile, and her voice sounded just fucking horrible. Like she just competed at the Arnold too. So I think like even in the wellness category, a lot, and we both know women personally who sound awful and have just virilized themselves to hell. When you see something like this with just very high peptide, like truly just high dose peptide therapies, and how effective it is. Granted, has a pretty good genetic proclivity, but like that's an awesome thing, because there's a pathway that can be used to get to those higher levels without having to abuse a copious amount of androgens.
Yeah, well, I agree, dude. Like, my opinion, if you are a female, is if you need to viralize yourself to even get a pro card, well, each unto their own, but you have to really think about, is that worth it? It's the same genetic predisposition with guys. Like, many of us, you're never going to get a pro card, you're never going to get to the Olympia stage, because, one, we just don't have the genes for it, and our response to drugs would be so that we'd either get too many side effects or we just don't respond as well. And I think it's just, I don't know why females don't think of it the same way. Like if you are finding that you are very sensitive to virilization and, you take, I don't know, 5 milligrams of Anavar daily and you start getting vocal changes, probably not going to be for you, unfortunately. Probably not going to be for you. And at the same time, I think many women should look at the end results and be like, okay, a lot of these females on this Olympia stage, have pro cards, are pretty viralized. As you said, their voice looks like, is this something I want? Because it's not necessarily reversible. It is for guys. That's why, going back to Cap, we said, like, hey, what is your risk tolerance? Where do you want to go with this? And we decided we'll push it as far as we can without any viralization. So, with her, like, even with anabolic compounds around, we had no side effects. Even, well, let me rephrase that. At the end of using the Proviron, we had a little bit of voice scratchiness. So there's no vocal changes because I check her voice with basically an application, which is like a decibel reader, where basically you can compare voice notes, and also have her speak and like compare voice notes to see if there's any changes. So from a decibel sense, and also just me listening to it. And that was just it, a bit of scratchiness, which is obviously the beginning signs if you would push that further. But obviously at the time we pulled back, we stopped, either resumed to normal. That's pretty much how we approach it, because I know unfortunately many females are coaches to be like, no, just push on, like you'll be fine. Like,
or they don't even track it. They don't even give it.
Yeah. All they don't track it. So all my female clients who use any sort of viralizing compound will track, their voice, will track any other side effects. I tell them, like, note for additional hair growth, don't send it to me, but like, monitor your clitoris changes there.
Right.
Just,
send Adam clitoris pics.
The guys can send me pics. That's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. Guys and lady boys, I don't mind. But yeah, you need to track those things, because you don't want to wake up one day and be like, oh fuck, like what's happened. And I feel like that does happen to a lot of girls. Like, as you said, like how many girls we know in the gym who are like at the amateur level, and it's like you speak to them, it's like, oh, someone's been running a lot of Anavar or Primo, fucking God knows what else. And like, is it worth it?
Yeah, exactly. And we were talking about this on Anabolic Bodybuilding's podcast, and with Jackie, who just won her pro card. And she looks great. Like, she's the most shredded female I've ever seen. And I was talking to her post show about Cat, right? And like what Cat's doing with growth hormone, and specifically, not using high dose androgens, because it was something that she was concerned about. Because at the end of the call, or at the end of the podcast, basically Roman was like, she asked, like, Roman, any advice for someone who's newly a pro, like what you would do? And he's like, well, my advice for females and males is going to be the same. It's time to take more. And so I was like, I was like, listen, this is what Kat's doing. She's getting wild results. I don't know why females don't play around with higher dose growth hormone, but this is what she's, and she was like, I've never heard of that. Like, I think this is so interesting, and I want to try it. And she had texted me and asked for, sort of the exact protocol and stuff. So I was like, yeah, this is, probably the way forward for a lot of females. If you don't, like you said, if you don't respond to it, it's probably not for you, because there's so much consequential side effects.
Yeah. So one other thing we tried, but I don't think it was real, is injectable IDF-1 directly in the glutes pre-workout. It was I can say the brand, right? It was Meditech, which I think is pretty shit.
Right.
And I don't think it was real, but I'm going to get my hands on some actual IDF-1 for her next growth phase, and then use it directly in probably like the glutes and quads.
Yeah.
Everything you need for wellness.
A kit in Thailand, a kit of Increlex is like $700 USD, basically $750 USD.
And that was the other thing
for the whole off season, essentially, if she's using it intermittently through glute days.
I mean, fuck, she's doing like 4 glute days a week. So
then,
it's going to be a fair bit of it. But well, no, that's exactly another thing I'm going to leverage too, because again, if we got local growth, no viralization, and another compound we can leverage, 100%. So her next off season post show, or her rebound post show, I'm definitely going to be implementing that. So with females, I'll almost say it's like, it's going to be expensive, because you're not using, you're just not scaling testosterone. So I mean, look, if you're a heavier dude like a Roman or something, you're spending a fuck ton on gear anyway. But I would almost say for certain females in the amateur level, it might actually end up being more expensive for you, because if you're running like 6+ IUs of growth hormone, like even with Cat, like next off season I might scale the growth hormone higher, like 8 IU plus,
Right.
because I'd rather scale that than the anabolics. Anabolics is probably going to keep quite stagnant. Like she probably will keep around that 35 milligram range. I know some females go to about 70 milligrams per week, but if you look at the literature, we know that 62.5 milligrams, I believe, is about what you need to transition from a female to male. So that's why I'm like, I'm not too sure about that. And also at the same time, our base dose is just based on the client. So if you're taking 35 milligrams and you're viralizing, well, fuck, pull back or take it out completely. But yeah, I do see 70 milligrams for a reason. It's quite a common dose, maybe because it's like 10 milligrams per day. But I'm like, I'm not too sure about that, because that is literally the starting dose to transition into male. So I'm like, I don't know about that. I get it. If you can do it for a short period of time, you can probably get away with it. But at the same time, like we just were discussing, I'd rather push the IGF, I'd rather push, the growth hormone, everything that's not going to viralize and have, I don't want to say similar results, but pretty good results.
Yeah. And I would even argue, man, like with what you're doing right now, those pictures we just looked at that you sent on WhatsApp, like we could use that as a proxy to what she look like on stage, and you could argue that she might not even need to change anything to peak. Like realistically, she might even get too lean for the category and have to get like over full to sustain like a good look on stage.
Yeah. It is a little bit difficult because it is her first show. Like I've got her very lean before, but not show lean. So obviously that point of show lean, everything diminishes, and there was no point because she wasn't competing at the time. So we don't have a point of reference. I'm sort of making estimations what I think. So it's a tough one where I need to make sure we're not going too fast, as you said, because she's competing like 4+ shows spread out across like 3 months. So I don't want her, lean too ready, but she has to hold that conditioning for an extended period of time. At the same time, also, we don't want to be fucking fat on stage. So it's about managing that rate of loss. Yeah, you're correct. So I got to make sure, because initially we've lost a lot, but I've actually slowed down her rate of loss a bit. Like next week, she's going to be taking diet break.
That's awesome.
And yeah, diet break, deload, reduction in steps, and then we'll hit it hard after that. And like I said, we've barely deployed Lipolex. Like Clen now is at like 40 micrograms.
Oh, wow.
T4 still at 50 micrograms. No T3. Your combines at like 3 milligrams. That's it.
Wow, man. That's awesome. That's fucking sick.
Yeah, so I still have a lot of levers to pull, which I'm going to do like post diet break.
What are her, sort of for selfish reasons, just to compare us with other clients? What are her calories generally at? Like right now, especially.
Oh, they're fucking hard. So we started the prep at about 3,000 calorie intake on training days. With training days was basically 3,000 plus an untracked meal. So it was like maybe 3,500.
Wow.
And low days, I believe, were about 2,500. The current calories, I believe training days are 2,000. And then rest days are 1,700 and refeed days are 2,500.
Wow. Dude, that's fucking sick.
Yeah, so she's on a fair bit of food.
Yeah.
Cardio is only at 30 minutes 4 times a week. And to be honest, she's been super busy. So sometimes it ends up being 3 sessions a week. So this cardio is not super high. Because really what I'm doing is I'm just trying to achieve a rate of loss. Yes, as she gets leaner, the rate of loss is going to be harder and harder to achieve. But as long as she's hitting that 1.25% per week, I'm okay. But obviously, as she gets leaner, we can't be missing cardio sessions and things like that. But as long as we've been hitting that target, it's been fine. And then steps is a fair high. Steps are at 15,000 steps. So expenditure is quite high, but I do that simply because, well, she has a similar setup to me with the walking desk, so it's the easiest way, and I'd rather have her eat more food as well. So yeah, that's where it's currently at.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Well, that's sick. I think anyone watching who's a coach could definitely look at that as a prime example of how to run a off season and a prep for a female using that growth hormone protocol. So guys, hope you're doing well. Thanks for answering my question last time. Of course, ask more. Good evening, gentlemen. Hope you all are feeling amazing, because I'm feeling amazing, basically, which is awesome. No, I'm not on drugs. This just came a long way from where I used to be, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity and resources to be better and dominate in all domains of life. I love that, man. Oh, perfect. We do have a question. How do you make such a low dose mix with other oils? I'm assuming he might be talking about the Primobolan.
Okay. Well, if you're doing 100, if it's dosed at 100 milligrams per ml, okay, it's quite easy. If you 100 milligrams per ml, 10 units on that is going to be 10 milligrams. which means 5 units on that is going to be 500 grams. So it's quite easy to dose it when it's dosed quite low on an insulin syringe. So all we do is get an insulin syringe, draw it out, make sure it's 5 units. Therefore, that's 5 milligrams. We do that daily, intramuscular or subcutaneous injection. That's pretty much it. So just look for low dose oils, ideally pharmaceutical, okay, to ensure, especially if you're female, okay, you don't be injecting UGL shit where you're not sure which primo or test, okay. It's going to make a big difference. That's all it is. So just look for lower concentration oils.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people try diluting. Like, let's say if they have someone who is a female trying to take lower dose testosterone, a lot of people try diluting it, which I've heard mixed things about because of the what would you say, the gear itself binding into the carrier oil. It usually needs to be heated to an appropriate degree, and there's some actual chemistry you have to do in there. It's not as easy as just like pumping in olive oil into the vial itself. So what I typically have people do is just, and this is not a plug, but it's just what I have them do is like Rise HRT, or I'm sure there's other HRT companies that work with competitors, but they'll happily like put women on testosterone at like a lower dose therapy of like 5 to 7 milligrams a week. And in that situation, they give them 25 milligram per milliliter vials, which is usually what I have done, because again, it's complicated chemistry, and most people could not do it unless they're very familiar with making gear.
Yes, correct. You're correct. It's not as easy. You have to actually ratio out the amount of benzyl alcohol solvent to allow it to actually assimilate together, or basically it's not going to mix. Okay, and then you making the wrong concentration because if the mixture doesn't assimilate, again, you have like all the olive oil sitting on the top, for example, and you draw out what do you think the diluted mixture is? You're not drawing out the diluted mixture, you're drawing out the concentrated version. Or if you're pulling out olive oil, you're just injecting olive oil if it's not actually properly assimilated. So yeah, correct. My go-to always is like try some pharmaceutical testosterone. You can find pharmaceutical propionate. To be honest, I haven't seen anyone without pharmaceutical propionate yet, but a pharmaceutical testosterone, or as you said, HRT clinic, get them to give you a lower concentration. And that's the way to do it. I'll be honest, like most of the females I work with aren't on HRT testosterone. And if they do need it, I always say go through clinic. Because you don't want to fuck around with either UGL gear or trying to mix it yourself and viralizing because you fucked it up. Like, it's not worth it.
Right. There's no way that's worth that, for sure. Joshua Perry asks, what's the highest testosterone level you guys have seen on blood work?
Probably my own when they fucked up the test. So I got some blood work back. I might try to find it where it said, I think it said my total testosterone was like 17,000 something.
Oh wow.
Nanograms. Yeah. All I think was happening was like it must have, because I was running Maestron and testosterone at the time. Because I think the testing just fucked out, like detected the Maestron as testosterone because it was like only, I think, 400 milligrams of test. And I think like 400 milligrams of Maestron at the time. And I was like, what the fuck is this? It was super. I retested it and then it was like back down to like, I think 17 or 1800.
I see.
And follow-up blood work like 12 months there, which I was a similar dose, but that was the highest I'd seen on my own. Clients were not super high, like 3,000, 4,000.
Yeah. 4,000 is, I think, the highest I've ever seen in any grams per deciliter. Yeah, hopefully Chase hits 20K. We'll see what happens. I don't know if he's actually going to be able to achieve that, but he also says, Adam, you did great, bud. You and man,
Thanks,
John,
bro.
do it.
Not quite John, but thanks.
Yeah. I heard berberine can reduce IGF-1. Do you think it'll be worth taking as a natty, or could slow down the gains?
I don't think it would. I don't think it would affect IGF-1 that significantly, personally.
No.
Yeah.
And to be honest, what we see with, like Chase Iron's a great example. He has horrifically low IGF-1, hitting 18 IUs of Serostim a night. So
exactly.
He has IGF-1 levels in the lower 300s, which is, like subpar for most people.
Yeah, I think Kurt and Paul were talking about it, where you guys have to realize like the IGF-1 on blood work is systemic IGF-1, which is typically used as a proxy to test for disease or some sort of other illness, where the local IGF-1 in the muscle is what we're looking for, and that we're not testing for. In fact, I don't know if we can test for that. Can we take like a piece of tissue or something to test for it? Maybe. I'm actually not sure. That's why, like, at best, I just use IGF-1 as like a proxy if we can't test growth hormone, where we take a shitload of growth hormone 2 hours before the test. And if it's elevated, I'm like, okay, it probably is growth hormone and not like fucking HCG or just, solvent in there. But I don't really use it for much else than that. If I saw IGF-1 in the trash, then I'd be like, okay, what's going on? And usually it's sleep. The person's had really, really poor sleep. But really, I don't pay that much attention to it.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It's not something on my radar most of the time. And I would argue this kind of falls in the same category as vitamin C. People worrying about the antioxidant status of vitamin C inhibiting gains.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no. And to be honest, let's say it does. And at an intracellular level, like you're getting inhibition, the upside might outweigh the downside in a sense of maybe the insulin sensitivity and the hepatic downregulation of like HDL receptors and increase in LDL receptors, like maybe that's worth it, and overall you systemically experience more gains because of those things. And even if your IGF-1 level is 2% lower, it's like, well, you still made more gains. So
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Why would you take berberine as a natty in the first place? Well, if you have a high blood glucose, you have to treat it somehow, to be fair. So
yeah, I was gonna say, whether you're natty or enhanced, berberine is there to act as a glucose disposal agent. So
yeah,
it's
a very potent. Yeah, very, very potent. And there is a discount code in the description, which does bring in First Attachment Nutrition, 11% off. I'm the only person in the whole company with 11% off as opposed to 10% off. So go get their glucose disposal agent. It works great. Honestly, it makes me go hypo, and it works better than metformin on my hemoglobin A1C. Slayer asks, what effects can low hematocrit have on recovery? I was taking an Alapril by mistake for about 4 weeks, and I was at like 41 hematocrit.
And the nicest possible way to, how will you take it on accident?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
But fair enough. Shit happens, right? Sure. I mean, I took Tren for 6 weeks by mistake. Like, shit happens. Yeah, I mean, look, 41 is on the low end. Typically, that would affect, my understanding is like your transportation of like vitamins and nutrients around the body. Okay, it can also potentially affect blood pressure, is my understanding too. If it gets blood viscosity gets too low, I believe. So, honestly, take some EQ. I'm kidding. Just stop the Anavar, and it should naturally bounce back up, especially if you're on testosterone. You have higher red blood cell production. So also it would affect your oxygen transport. So it might affect your ability or your actual like cardiovascular fitness. So that's why, cyclists are trying to do the opposite. Tour de France boys, they're trying to get hematocrit like 60. So their blood is actually for a shit ton of red blood cells and to basically have enhanced oxygen carrying capacity. So all the benefits of higher hematocrit, you're probably experiencing the opposite. You might be a bit lethargic. You might have like poor nutrient oxygen transport, which might affect like recovery and affect training performance. Just stop taking the Alapril, add some additional red meat, check your iron levels that you're not too low, because iron transport helps. Iron ferritin storage helps basically red blood cell production. Okay, there's a lot of mechanisms that affect red cell blood production, but long story short, if you're on testosterone, eating red meat, training, it will bounce back up. You'll be fine.
Yeah, and like the biggest effect you're probably going to experience is, like Adam said, just the increase in overall fatigue in training. Like you just probably have less go and oxygen carrying capacity is by nature what you're going to have. So that in and of itself probably isn't ideal. You'll definitely want to get that back up as soon as possible by doing
take some EPO.
Yeah, just super dose that. Do a Greg Doucette and pin 2,000 milligrams of EQ to front load it. And don't do that. Kane, hey guys, switching from TRT 200 milligrams to 400 test and have some 25 milligram Anavar. Thoughts on that as a pre-workout with a test only cycle? I think we're both pretty bullish with Anavar in specific.
Look, if it's pharmaceutical Anavar, shit. I mean, I find that 5 to 10 milligrams is more than enough, because you're not really using that Anavar to like as your main driver of anabolism. Yes, obviously, having an additional anabolic help with growth. Yes, of course, but What I'm more concerned about is if I take too much of the Anavar, I find that even though I'm doing sublingual administrations, often I get impatient, I swallow some of it basically leaks to my gut, and I'm very sensitive to that. So it causes me gastric distress, my appetite will go to shit. So I want just enough to give me an enhanced workout where I have like better neurological drive, better I call it aggression, okay, but not really in the gym, basically allow me to push through on those harder workouts. So I would start on a lower dose, like 5 milligrams sublingual on training days, and then just titrate there. If you might need a bit more, if it's a UGL and it's not necessarily accurately dosed. But yeah, dissolve it under the tongue. It's going to bypass, for the most part, the gastrointestinal tract, the liver, okay, which is going to increase its bioavailability and its absorption rate. You're going to have a better effect from it. Probably look better on your blood work too. And that's, I think, the most effective way to do it, unless you want to stick it up the ass. But I'll leave that to you.
we don't want to boof no Anavar here. I do agree. I find that even 5 to 10 milligrams of Anavar, and I got someone sent me a ton of free Anavar here last week. It was so awesome.
Yeah.
And so even like 5 to 10 milligrams, it gives me a huge neurological, like it's such an interesting concept to even explain unless you've experienced it before, but you just feel much more in tune with the muscles that are firing. And I can directly experience, let's say on a chest fly, each fiber firing in an accurate sense compared to non-Anavar days where it's like the firing is there and you're still getting a pump and the training's still great, but you just don't feel as efficient per rep. I don't know how to quite explain that in better words, but it is an amazing compound to use as a pre-workout, especially when androgens are that low. It'd be a nice way to, add an extra 50-ish milligrams per week for sure.
Yep.
Just Beige asks, hey fellas, is my deficit too low in a long cut? Dom's starting to hang around longer, especially after heavy leg day. Fatigue is up, roughly 700 calorie deficit per day with 1 refeed at maintenance per week. So also he gives more context. Also 6 to 8 weeks left. Is it too late to increase my testes? So let's start with this first question. Generally, what I've been experiencing, and this is honestly what I've been doing, because as me and Adam said on the intro of this thing, we have a lot of clients in prep. What I've been experiencing and have been doing as like a direct protocol with most of my clients is coming out the gate hard as fuck. And this is just how I've been doing it. Aggressive, like really aggressive, high cardio, low calories, high step counts, etc. And then as that fatigue starts to present itself, I then reverse calories and go the opposite direction. And what I tend to find, and that's not on like, just adding in a second high day, that's like increasing systemically calories across low, medium, and high days. With using those low days as more of the fat loss days directly. So they stay a bit lower. But I find that weight still continues to go down and fatigue drops off. And suddenly you have someone who can now do more activity in the gym. And I think in doing more activity and performing better in the gym, that immediate fat loss was gained. Now fatigue is dropped and we're seeing a sustainment of fat loss just at a slower rate. This for me is what I've kind of been seeing. So if it's hard to say, right? Like if after your high days, this is what will really key you in. After your high days, if you sustain weight or if you drop weight a few days after, you could use a bit of a refeed, a higher caloric intake for lack of a better term. But and generally speaking too, for myself, I'm super sensitive to this, and Adam's been helping me a lot. I like 100 calories of difference in my diet to like from like right around 3,200 is where I get absolutely diced. If I go below this, I'm obliterated. Like it's hard for me to get out of bed, kind of fatigue. So having more calories frequently throughout the week can be really beneficial. That obliterated feeling where it's hard to get out of bed is something you want to avoid at all costs because it's hard to dig out of that hole.
Yeah, and I would also further add to that. It's very hard for us to look at a number. Okay, obviously, if you said, "Oh, I'm a 2,000 calorie deficit," I'd be like, "Okay, yeah, fuck." But like, it's very hard to look at a specific number. Oh, is 700 too much? Is 500 too much? Is 600 too much? 800 too much? So instead, I say let's reverse engineer it or think about it a bit differently. What you should be looking at is where's your rate of loss per week? Considering that all other variables like PDs are saying the same, like you haven't just pulled Lantus, pulled growth hormone, which is going to cause a lot of intracellular water and glycogen loss. So let's pretend PDs are constant. What is your rate of loss per week? If it's above, I would say 1.5%, for an enhanced guy, you're probably going too fast, in my experience, and you're going to have a fuckload of fatigue. Then what are your training is like? So you mentioned that you are getting a lot of fatigue after your leg days. Fatigue is up. But then I would say, okay, well, sure, you're getting fatigue, but are you regressing in training performance? So if I start looking at clients' training and I start saying, oh, fuck, we're getting rep drop-offs a lot, and also they haven't been like training for 16 weeks and they haven't had a deload, okay? So let's say you like, I don't know, week 7, week 6 in your mesocycle, training cycle, and all of a sudden you're seeing pretty significant rep drop-offs, then and your rate of loss, is above 1.5%, then I'd say, hey, you probably are going too fast. So to give you a more definitive answer, it's basically like, what is your rate of loss and what is your training like objectively? Not like I feel fatigue, because not to be mean, but like feelings are subjective. Many people like feel horrible, but like they're still pushing through. Like I've got quite a few clients who are absolute machines, and these guys will be like, I feel great, cut calories, coach, and I'll be like, dude, like fucking chill. Your training performance has dropped off this last week. You actually need a diet break or refeed. So training objectively in terms of reps and load, and as well as rate of loss, the two things I will look at the deficit is too fast. Okay, but as Colton said, I prefer more aggressive deficit, especially pulling back on rest days and then throwing in additional refeed days there too. I think it gets a better result than a really slow and steady deficit, at least for my experience. So basically, long story short, it depends. I would just look at your training data, dude, and I would look at your average rates of loss, not based on one weigh-in. Okay, have at least 4 or 5 weigh-ins so you get a good average, and compare those averages and see how much are you losing. Okay, but again, I will say this, that's considering like all PEDs, water intake, etc., has stayed consistent, because those can fluctuate weight a fair bit. You're like, oh my god, I've lost 4 pounds. It's like, no, you just like lost a bunch of water.
Yeah, and I think that's also so important. And everyone says, oh yeah, I'll do this, but they don't. But like measuring averages and then comparing it to your last week's average and then the last week before that. And if you're sustaining a good percentage loss, which is, as Adam said, like 0.5 total body weight to a percent total body weight, like that's gold, man. And if you're doing that, you're perfect. You can stay there. But if fatigue is accumulating and you're seeing really huge drops, it's like, okay, then we need to maybe pull up a little bit. Or if you're just experiencing fatigue that's limiting your output, which again, I think a lot of the times people need to back up and look at what the overall goal is. It's to be a bodybuilder, like it's to be big. And this is, I'm completely guilty of this myself, because I just push into the ground, as Adam was saying, like I'm the guy that's just like cut more calories, like I can fucking do this. But if you just do that, and fatigue stays high and training goes to shit, you're not really building a physique anymore. You're deteriorating it. So it is imperative that if performance is honestly and objectively dropping off, you probably need a solid refeed.
And I don't mean to further complicate your question too, but I've got a lot of guys in long deficit and prep phases. And as Colton was saying, with the more aggressive starting point, I actually like to push androgens up initially, use higher doses of growth hormone if it's feasible for them. And often you don't see a big weight shift. Like I was showing with Kat, there was a 4-pound difference in 5 weeks. With most people like, oh, 4 pounds, she hasn't lost much fat. She's got fucking shredded abs after 4 or 5 weeks. So that makes it a bit more complicated, which is why I really pay attention to visual data, i.e. your progress photos and your training data. Because honestly, sometimes the averages don't mean shit. Like I've got lots of clients who go to me, oh, Adam, we're not losing much weight this week. I'm like, dude, look at this photo and look at this photo. They're like, oh fuck, yeah, I see what you mean.
I mean, this happened to Paul with his prep, as he did the exact same thing where he pushed the androgens higher than they had been all the off season, because he was only on 250 milligrams, and then he pushed calories higher because he wasn't like staying consistent on the diet during the off season. As a result, he literally maintained his weight for the majority of prep and got shredded. So
fucking Kevin Laronde himself.
Yeah, exactly. Seems like an old guy thing. TV. Colton, saw your live video with on one of Paul's podcasts where you said you were doing Winstrol 100 milligrams per day. How long can you run this, and what's your experience? So I was again, some of them are probably watching this right now. A lot of peeps from Canada hooked me up with a bunch of stuff, so I have a ton of free shit, which is just like the coolest in the world. But a lot of Winstrol tabs. I got 50 Winstrol tabs. The only unfortunate thing is they're 20 milligrams. So what I was doing, because of what Paul was doing, I wanted to see how it would work in my context. So I was taking 100 milligrams of Winstrol it was only 50 tabs of 20 milligram tabs. So it's for basically 5 tabs a day. So 5, 10 days. Jesus. So I'm done now. It was good for 10 days. It was good. The workouts were insane. The pumps were amazing, but that's about all I can say. I didn't really see any sort of, and this might just be because I'm not lean enough, of course, but I didn't see any sort of architectural changes in my body. I didn't see anything that was notably impressive, like, whoa, like that was a sudden shift. I just felt very, even though I wasn't, which was weird, but I felt very hypertensive. Like I could feel my fucking heart beating in my forehead. I could hear it, which is a big red flag. But when I went to go get my blood pressure tested, it was, 2 hours after taking the Winstrol and a workout. It was perfectly fine. So I'm not sure what that was. Maybe it was just blood vessel constriction at large or neurologically constricted was. I don't know. But I will say it was fun, but that's about as far as I can go with it, to be honest.
Anecdotally speaking too, I kind of agree there with Winstrol. Like, take it as a pinch of salt. This is my own experience, but I found I get better workout performance from Anavar. So I get better strength adaptations, and I find Winstrol, when I am leaner, it has a great cosmetic effect. I definitely feel like I look a lot sharper, but I find that I get crazy back pumps from it, crazy cramping. My joints don't feel good on it. So Winstrol for me, even though I like the cosmetic effect, and it does have an effect on training performance too, the side effects I get from it are just not worth it. So with most individuals, during a peak, sometimes, or mock peak rather, I will trial, one mock peak Anavar, one mock peak Winstrol, and usually what I find is cosmetic. They look pretty much the same, but they just feel less shit on the Anavar and doesn't give them as much, cramping and joint related issues with that. So I usually just stick to the Anavar. Nothing against Winstrol. If you respond well to it and you get a good cosmetic effect, sure. Personally, I wouldn't use it in place of Anavar, like you're in an off-season phase or you're just doing a normal cut and you want some enhanced workout performance. I think Anavar or Turinabol are better options.
Yeah, I agree. I actually, speaking on that, now that you say it, Turinabol by far outweighs the Winstrol high dose therapies. That for me is one of the best oral compounds I've ever taken, and something that I don't think that is insane, absolutely insane. Like that shit made me go wild in the gym. But yeah, that's what my thoughts were on that. It was fun, but I don't think it had huge applications in. I'm just taking content ideas because we came up with something that was pretty smart there. But I think it was fun in application, but just not very efficacious in use, and probably wouldn't be for most people unless they were in a peak week where I could see the architectural changes being needed. So and so okay, this is just Beige's secondary question. Also, 6 weeks to 8 weeks left. Is it too late to increase my testosterone and enthate to get more benefits from 200 milligrams to 300 milligrams per week, or will it take too long to get the desired result from upping the dose?
No, you can up it.
I think you could do it. I think people, which is correct, it takes a while to get to peak blood serum concentrations, but that doesn't mean immediately after injection your blood serum concentrations don't already increase, because they do. So 3 days after you inject, you're going to experience an increase in blood serum concentrations at a higher dose. It's just not going to be the peak level that you're totally injecting. So it's not like you don't receive benefit. I would say it's, if you're still experiencing greater degrees of fatigue, it would be something worth looking into. In a prep scenario, this would be where I have like propionate on hand or acetate on hand, because of this exact reason. But what are your thoughts?
It's never too late to up the dose. Words to live by. Yeah, same thing, dude. Nanthate ester, like 7 to 10-ish days doesn't mean you're not getting a benefit from it. Like, people often say, taking test E, it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks to kick in. I'm like, no. It might take a while to reach peak serum concentration levels, but you think the testosterone is doing nothing? Of course it's working. Okay, so same thing there. You can make an adjustment now and definitely feel it. If you're feeling, as you just described, you feel fatigue quite a bit, I would look at increasing the testosterone to about 300. It depends on what you're running right now. If you tell me, oh, I'm running like a gram, I'm like, we're going to 1100. I think it's making a difference. If you're taking, as you potentially said, 200 to 300, yeah, I think that make a difference. I think that make a difference because, again, there's going to be a point in time where it doesn't matter how high you push the gear. Fatigue and food are really what's driving it, and it doesn't matter if you take 2 grams of testosterone, you're still going to feel fatigued.
Yeah. Joshua Perry asks, oh, he also says much love from New Zealand. Appreciate you, bro. I believe I set Aaron your way. He wanted to talk to someone from New Zealand. I believe I sent him your contact info, but just be on the lookout for that. Joshua Perry, US 5'7". This is in reference to the anger, but that's the thing.
Yeah.
And an ultra sensitive assay, or just a sensitive assay at 42. Well managed ? 2 grams of testosterone, 400 milligrams per gram. I would say so. I would say that's great. Yeah. That's
as long as you're getting side effects from the estradiol, that's like slightly above the reference range. Typically 40 is top of the reference range. That's absolutely fine as long as you're not experiencing side effects. If you're experiencing like any sort of nipple sensitivity or any sort of other telltale signs of estrogen activity, or that, I would just slightly up the primo. That's it.
Yeah. I think for most people, you are hanging around 30 to 60 picograms per milliliter is about gold standard, as long as you can tolerate it.
Yes,
that's great. Yes. At what dose of growth hormone does it start giving benefits of hyperplasia? This is almost virtually impossible to answer because there's not been any studies that can actually prove hyperplasia is happening in tissue, in human tissue. There was one study done on a strongman, and he had notified the administrators of the study that he had taken growth hormone, and they had done muscle biopsies and all these different professional athletes, and they found one fiber that had divided into 2 fibers, which is hyperplasia, but only one fiber. Out of all of the subjects they tested, which were all professional athletes, they only found one fiber that was divided. They've never otherwise seen or had an extraction of muscle tissue in anybody where there was hyperplasia. And a while back, there was a study done on Flex Wheeler where they did muscle biopsies and tested for a lot of different things. One of those things was genetic expressions that are deviant from the normal versions of you and I for myostatin. And even in that study, there was no notable signs of hyperplasia. And on the best of the best bodybuilders in the world, right? So the Olympian bodybuilders. So it's hard to say. I don't know. I believe it might be happening in some instances, but I don't think many bodybuilders are going out there and manually getting, a fucking 0.5 centimeter to 2 centimeters of tissue just extracted from their skin, from their muscle, their quadriceps of all places, just to get it tested under a microscope. It'd be cool if we did. It really would be cool. And a lot of you say, "Oh, I'd do it," and I'd say, "I don't know where." I don't know if we could talk to you on that. But we don't know. There's almost zero data to support that this might happen.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to reiterate, guys, like a lot of the data that we're talking about is sometimes it's animal studies, sometimes it's on, patients or untrained. And we kind of extrapolating this stuff and then putting together a combination of our own experience, opinion, what we're seeing. So please don't take it as well, we saw X study, therefore it is 100% true. No, a lot of this is extrapolated data combined with anecdotal stuff. That's why bodybuilding, why I personally find it so interesting, because you're basically crossing science and bro science and trying to find some objective midpoint. Sure, there are some things we know objectively, but it would be almost impossible for us to say it. And the same thing with a lot of other things that we see with pharmacology, because, as Colton mentioned before, who's actually doing the testing? 2, who's controlling the variables? Everyone's taking different drugs. There's so many different variables to it that it's one of those ones where it's rather just do your own blood work, do what was working effectively for you and don't worry too much about it. I'm not saying don't be objective, but you go down this rabbit hole and you're which often I do myself and often I know Colton does too, where you realize that, wow, we know a lot, but we also don't know a lot at all in terms of what is actually happening. And that's where it's okay, pull back, stick to what's working, and don't, really kill yourself thinking, oh, fuck, am I getting hyperplasia? Well, what dose of growth hormone is going to give the most lipolysis, et cetera, et cetera. just do what works.
Yeah,
So make
sometimes
adjustments
it
from
is
there.
just, unfortunately, observe and what happens.
Yeah,
And if you
exactly.
do have a hypothesis, the scientific method is to test against your own hypothesis. So if you think,
Yes.
well, I believe that hyperplasia happens at 3 IUs of growth hormone, test against it. I'm going to take 3 IUs of growth hormone and do a muscle biopsy and see if this happens. But otherwise, we don't know with this specific question. So, and it's Adam's exactly right. Everything that we do in bodybuilding coaching isn't about reading studies. We do that more so for our own sake of understanding mechanism and for fun. I honestly enjoy going through data and looking at stuff and then extrapolating data. But it's not necessarily applicable in the common man's prep. It's not, unfortunately. I could tell you all the science in the world behind all these different compounds and peptides and things of that nature, but it's just not going to do anybody any favors. I mean, like, there's so many coaches that do this. Alex Keekel being one of these motherfucking pieces of shit, that just states what he sees in a study as mechanism and then talks about it in application as if it's going to have any effect. And where are his clients? It's like it doesn't happen. So anyways, oh, perfect. So 0.5 kgs per week on average, but feeling flat in both visually and psychologically. So that is a pretty aggressive drop depending on your total body weight. I don't know what your total body weight is here. But I would say that is pretty aggressive if you're anywhere below 200 pounds or 90-ish, 85-ish.
I'll do the conversion here. So if you're 100 kilo male, 1% would be a kilo per week. So it'd be 0.5%. So if you're under 100 kilos, that could be quite aggressive. If you're above 100 kilos above, that's pretty much somewhat where you want to be. But as you said, you're feeling flat both visually and physically. Feeling flat visually is fine. Like, you're supposed to be flat. Like, you're in a deficit phase. Like, guys who are looking full on prep might not be coming in lean enough, not necessarily, but looking fat is fine. And then psychologically, that's also fine. Like I said, you got to look at the objective stuff. The objective stuff is going to be your training data. The objective stuff is going to be your average rate of loss, which you stated there. And if the training data, that's fine, then yeah, man, it sucks, but it's just one of those, like, mentally push through. Maybe titrate your stimulant dosage. Like, maybe use a bit more caffeine if you're required to get going in the morning. Maybe titrate anabolics, as we stated. Make sure you're taking adequate rest days. And this might sound silly, but many individuals think, oh, I'm in a deficit, I need to train more. Like, no, you just need to do enough to stimulate growth. You don't want to be your off-season phase in your training should have a higher MRV or higher total working sets, or just higher intensity than a deficit phase. If you're trying to add sets in a deficit phase, at least a significant amount, you're doing things the wrong way, in my opinion. So look at that.
Jared, specifically on that topic, Jared talked about that last week very well.
Oh yeah.
I think he had a good viewpoint, a huge and a great objective viewpoint on this, where he reduces volume but increases intensity techniques because it lowers the total amount of weight that a person uses, but still applies a stimulus for growth or maintenance of muscle tissue. And I think that's the way to go, because if you can limit overall volume and exposure to unrecoverable volumes, then you're going to feel a lot better too, which is kind of a lot of where people fuck up. Because I know, trust me, I've worked with a lot of the coaches out there. A lot of them just think increasing volume towards the end of a show is the way to go, and it will nuke you. Always
add some pump work, brother. 10 sets of 10.
Yeah, exactly. Every fucking time. And I do agree with Joshua Perry, as Adam just said too. You got to get flat to lose fat. Prep starts out as you're fat and you're flat. It sucks. It's the worst position to be in. But the hoping part is that you get to a hard and grainy look behind that fat and flat. Okay, no, that's illegal. Damn, man.
I'm doing whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, brother. Come on.
Do you keep some of that mind muscle connection you get from Anavar after you stop using it? This is an interesting question, because it proposes that there's like a total psychological, maybe physiological adaptation that you get, period, like epigenetic wise, from Anavar. I would say, in a way, it teaches you how to contract muscle tissue. And I think that's probably the biggest benefit there when I was talking about that, is that you can feel what it feels like to flex a side lat when you're a medial delt, when you're doing a side lateral. And not a lot of people understand what that feels like, but when you can really feel it, you kind of know, okay, this is interesting. This is when I put my arm here, I get a huge sensation, but when it's over here or when it's over here, I'm not getting as much. So I'll keep doing this next time. And then you start to really feel that a lot better. But I don't think it's anything that the Anavar is doing itself. I think it's more just you taking note of how things are feeling.
Correct. So I would like to propose that mind muscle connection to an extent is a skill. Okay.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's something you learn over time. Think of the first time you did a squat. Think of the first time you did bench press. It was probably jank as fuck, and you just felt sore in your general area. I mean, I specifically remember when I used to train, I used to just feel my whole arm, when I did a bicep curl. But then after a period of time, okay, I could actually feel my bicep, specifically contract. So as Colton was saying, if you're taking Anavar and it's improving your workouts, you're feeling the muscle more and you're leaning into that, okay, yeah, you'll probably maybe develop that skill, that mind-muscle connection a bit better. And it's a skill that you've developed. If you just take Anavar and train like a dipshit and not really pay attention to yourself or what muscle you're trying to target, it's probably going to have no effect. So it's a skill which you develop over time. And sure, things like, oral steroids pre-workout can potentially help you develop that skill, but it's not going to directly develop it in the sense that like, I get more mind-muscle connection from Anavar. We take more. No, it's a skill that you develop, which you can do, completely without any compounds.
Yeah, 1000%. Is injectable L-carnitine worth any possible benefits as a natural? Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Its proposed mechanism, it should still work without any other need for. I mean, your endogenous. So some might say insulin is needed to get L-carnitine to work, which is true. But no human is completely void of insulin, even if you're on a ketogenic diet for your whole life. So that's not an issue. I believe that the mechanism still works. To what extent and to how effectively, though, I'm not sure. It's even as a coach, having people use it and not use it, it's hard to say what the changes are actually doing. There could be some, for sure.
Yes, I haven't seen, at least when anyone who's used injectable carnitine, is like immediate visual or train performance difference. The biggest acute effect I ever got was speaking to Dr. Toddley, who was like, inject it into your outer sweep of your quad to get more mind muscle connection. And I guess he was right, because it hurt like fucking shit. And I did feel my quads a lot for 30 minutes. And that's the greatest acute effect I've ever got from injectable carnitine. But as Caldwell said, the proposed effects being, upregulation of androgen receptors as a natural, is that going to make a difference? Maybe. There's also some data that improves insensitivity. It's something called metabolic flexibility. And you find that study was quite interesting. But they basically spoke about how it may have a similar effect on nutrient partitioning and nutrient uptake, which was quite interesting, because then I was like, this is me now hypothesizing, extrapolating data. Well, then wouldn't that make a carnitine more beneficial in an off-season phase where you're pushing androgens higher and you're trying to stay more insulin sensitive and have better nutrient uptake and partitioning? So now I'm actually thinking, well, I prefer to run our carnitine actually in an off-season phase as well as a prep phase. So that's something that I've been thinking about. But going back to the question, as a natural, I don't want to give you the shitty answer, but like, I don't know, I think DHEA, pregnenolone, good sleep, good diets, training hard is going to benefit. Also, it's really painful to inject. So like, if you're natural, it's like the shittest thing to do.
Yeah.
So I would say dial in all those other aspects, bro. If you are like an elite level natural bodybuilder and you've really dialed in this other stuff, sure. But then also, I don't know, I'm pretty sure L-carnitine injectable is banned by WADA. Don't quote me on that.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you could do it if you were a natural bodybuilder. So if you're just natural, you don't want to affect your endogenous testosterone. DHA, pregnenolone, I would say. Train hard, sleep well. Don't worry about the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, and or like, I'm glad you're talking about injectable, because oral L-carnitine is, you have to take so much, and it's so expensive to even get a biologically available dose. But injectable is much more efficacious. It's just, as Adam said, it's the shittest thing you can inject. It's not like, you could grab a mill of testosterone and be just fine, not feel a thing. But L-carnitine, can be very rough to inject. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. And if you're going to go that far, you might as well just pin some fucking gear, bro. Let's be honest. Let's just be very clear on this. Keith, you don't need anything more, bro. You have a stock for years. You don't need
Keith is asking this because Keith has a stockpile probably of Turinabol. So thoughts on Turinabol? Yes, Keith, I like Turinabol a lot. Yes, we can add it. Okay, if we want to use that instead of sublingual. It's really talked about for some reason. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. Maybe it's really talked about because my understanding of Turinabol was really a performance-based drug. Basically, came around the Olympics during West Germany, at that time, during, when the Soviet Union was still around. It was a very popular drug in the Olympics. I remember even reading about the Turinabol almost mouthwash, where they would basically get it, swish it around in their mouth, like the first sublingual administrations, and they'll basically do that pre-lifts and pre-training. That's how they got a fuckload of Turinabol in. But in terms of enhancing performance, yeah, dude, I think it's awesome. In fact, it's usually my go-to above Anavar. The only issue I find with it is the same things I get with Anavar. You get like a shitload of cramping from it sometimes. Obviously, I try to take taurine and increase my electrolytes or water intake, but even then, it's still work curve. I'm taking it quite frequently. But it's actually one where, for pure workout performance, I use it quite frequently. It doesn't have the same cosmetic effect, I find, as Anavar, so probably that's why it's less well used, because people, when they're lean, they want to look sharper, etc., so they'll use their Anavar. But off-season phase, I really like Turinabol, and I think it's can be used to enhance performance.
Yeah, I love it. As I said, I had a spree there with injectable Turinabol, and it was probably one of the best pre-workout formulations I've ever used for just like raw strength accrual. Like I've never, even on Anadrol, I've never had something that gets me that strong so suddenly. I loved it, but I think with great strength comes great responsibility, because that's where you run into a lot of tendon, ligaments related things that are not favorable. Oakley says, just added Proviron and Winnie yesterday for my cut phase. Should I be taking those pre-workouts? Taking them first thing in the morning. So Proviron, if you're just stuck on having that in for some reason, which I don't think you need it at all, to be fair, I think you can probably just save your money and buy more Winstrol at the end of the day. But if you were stuck on having that in, it is a relatively short half-life, so you'll have to dose that more frequently. I would say take that in the morning, and then also take that later in the evening and midday if you want to get really technical. With the Winstrol, I would just, because we're looking to get more of the peripheral benefits as opposed to like the direct anabolism, I would say taking it pre-workout is probably best.
Yeah. As I say to everyone, like, going back to the choice of Winstrol and Proviron, what are you trying to get out of it? So with Proviron, you typically were looking to be lower sex hormone binding globulin. Why are you trying to lower that now? I mean, guessing using Winstrol, and I don't know what else using, let's assume testosterone, maybe not a DHT, I would probably expect SHBG to be quite low anyway. And lowering it further, I mean, maybe I don't know, maybe if you're going off this, for whatever reason, a lot of bodybuilders I speak to, not a lot, okay, I've had a few guys say to me, Proviron thins the skin. I don't know where the fuck that came from. I've had a lot of guys approach me when they're prepping, like, I'm eating like 200 milligrams of Proviron daily to thin the skin. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Personally, I would just take out the Proviron. Okay. I think it has very limited application in bodybuilding. Sure, there's certain circumstances. Maybe you want to lower SHBG. I know, very low dose of test, TRT, want to lower it a bit to get some more free test. Sure. Winstrol, sure, but again, as we discussed, as long as you're not getting like crazy joint issues and back pumps and cramping, that's fine. As Colton said, based on those half-lives, that's the same administration I would do. And then, Winstrol, sublingual. They do have short half-lives, so you do want to dose it frequently. But I'm going to say, like, again, for what purpose? So first assess your purpose, and then assess if the drug is appropriate for that purpose.
Yeah. Exactly. Jay Gambler asks, hey guys, I've been diving into Justin Harris' content and recently started carb cycling for a cut. Wondering what your thoughts are on this, his approach. It's great. It works. I think we all basically use it to some degree. A lot of people are more severe than others. So like I'm more moderate, I think. Whereas like Justin himself has like literally like 1,500 grams of carbs on one day and then 100 grams on the next day. I'm more like, I think we talked about this last week too. I'm more in the middle where it's like there's 200 to 300 grams of deviations. It's not that huge swing. On paper, it looks cool, but really what's just happening is you're highly underfeeding someone on one day. You're highly overfeeding them on the other day. And the average net calories are about the same. So,
I think he said it himself that on the low days, you're pretty much in a deficit. And you're in quite a significant surplus on the high days, and the training days sort of even out. I'm the same. What I actually like to do personally is actually on the low days, I push up fat and protein intake, and to allow us to further lower carbohydrate intake, and then basically have a shift in macros on training days. But it's just basically the idea of carbohydrate or calorie cycling. It's all going to work to some extent. The most important thing is that you're in a deficit, and that you're having somewhat semi-regular refeeds. I will say on the refeeds, that's it, or rather hard days. Some people include them from the beginning. Some people wait a bit later in the deficit phase. I usually say if your off season is quite high in terms of you eating a shitload of food, usually just a low day and a train day is fine before you need to implement a high day when you start getting flat. Because shit, man, if you're eating a shitload of calories in an off season phase or a maintenance phase transitioning to a cut, you probably won't need a high day for a small period of time. But again, it depends on the individual.
Entirely. Colton asks, I hear Primo is harder to come by now in Thailand. Prob's going to get tests only when I get there. So how much is Aromasin or Aromadex over the counter? Yeah, so it's very cheap, man. I don't know the exact price. Maybe it's not going to be over a couple bucks for what you need. Me and Adam went through the most hilarious journey ever, like stopping at every pharmacy ever.
That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, and we never found a single bottle of Rimabolin, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, but AIs are definitely there, and that's what I've vouched for, is just doing testosterone only when you go to these countries, and using an AI intermittently if you need to. But and then he asks, or are the UGLs that don't use synthetic carrier oils harsh solvents over there? So I could use Control E2 with something like Equipoise. So me and Adam have both had speculations of this in Thailand. It's hard to say what's real or not, unfortunately. Especially, look, if you go to any pharmacy you go to is going to have UGL shit in it. The problem is it's mostly, if not all, bunk. There's one source that we use, and you can DM either of us for that source. It's a pharmacy, but she's just the go-to for everyone in Thailand. She's literally amazing. She has everything you'll need. The problem is that the UGL stuff still is questionable. So that's what I can say.
Yeah, Colton, my advice would be, this is YouTube Colton.
Yeah.
YouTube Colton, my advice is do not buy UGL stuff from the pharmacy. It may sound strange. Everyone jokes about, oh, you can buy gear in pharmacies in Thailand. Well, if you actually are in the know and you live in Thailand, actually do not buy gear from pharmacies. Can you sometimes buy a few ancillaries? Can you maybe buy an Ampure Bayer test? Yes, usually you get ripped off because it's double the price. So I mean, still cheap relative to the US, right? But it'll be double the price Thailand wise and often fake. So it's actually counterintuitive. I know you see a lot of shit on social media, guys like going to a Thailand pharmacy getting stuff. Most actual bodybuilders here who are not retarded and are in the know, sorry, I said the R word, know that you actually don't go to the pharmacy. So yeah, as Colton said, message us, we'll be nice, we'll direct you send you in the right direction. But it is, once you know the right people, very easy to get what you want. As Colton said, some of the UGL stuff can be a bit difficult where, I've got blood work back on my EQ. I'm like, is this fucking EQ? Like, my hematocrit and red blood cell count haven't moved at all. And I'm like, I'm not too sure. But for the most part, it is very easy to get stuff. It's very easy to get some pharmaceutical stuff. And yes, Primobolan, we looked everywhere for that Bayer Primobolan. Couldn't find shit. But I have been able to find one or two somewhat reliable UGLs where I'm quite certain it is Primobolan.
Yeah, the only place I'd say that we haven't checked is Chiang Mai. So depending on where you're going, maybe you could scout out Chiang Mai for us and tell us what's going on there.
I'll go visit Victor.
Yeah.
He's got all the Mars and Primo there. So
that's a fucker. Probably raped it. AI, oh shit, asks, what was your favorite cycle and how long did you run it? My favorite cycle was testosterone, Masteron, and NPP, and that was post my last show that I did. I ran that for probably 36 weeks, pre and post show. Changed my life. I think it was more a product of my position with body fat and then rebounding from that show, that more like I could have probably used any fucking androgen. But for that moment in that time, that was the most euphoria, the most progress in training that I had, and exceptionally well libido during that time, for sure.
My favorite, it's kind of hard to say because there's been different points in time where the reason why it's been my favorite has rather been that point in time rather than the cycle itself. Like, I could easily say, well, it's the first time I took testosterone propionate. I was like, holy fuck, this is fantastic. I actually fucked up the dose, and it was like, I think I was taking like something stupid, like 18 milligrams or something. I was very, very young. It was very silly, but it was like a really underdose. I still felt great. But I would say overall, probably the best was just using growth hormone, insulin, and testosterone in combination. I found that was awesome. because I hadn't used insulin before. I had limited use of growth hormone. Using the combination, I felt awesome, and it was like 300 to 400 milligrams of testosterone, like 4 IUs of growth hormone, and Humalog as needed, 5% I use. I didn't think I was using Lantus at that point yet, and that was probably my favorite. Other than that, I do like when I use Equipoise. I do like the EQ test combination. Those are probably my favorites. Actually, probably the favorite was when I came back for other favorite. I'm naming many, all of them. No, post gynecomastia surgery. So this is when I use Equipoise, testosterone, and Turinabol, and I found that worked really well.
Yeah, Equipoise is yeah, like you said, there's favorites for different reasons. Equipoise is probably my other favorite, just for like sheer performability in the gym and seemingly like more vascularity and such too. I love that fucking compound.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably my favorite compound, not my favorite cycle, but my favorite compound.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Davis asks, "Hey guys, any advice on not having to urinate 4 to 5 times a night?" Usually, it's pretty hard to escape this. As a bodybuilder, if you're drinking, adequate amounts of water. The problem is that most people, there's a few problems, and I'll give mine, and then Adam can give his. Most people are guzzlers, so they drink a ton of water in one setting. That is a surefire way to pee a lot. If you're a sipper, you're not going to pee nearly as much. It's just physiologically, when you drink a lot of water, your body's like, oh, let's dump some shit up. But when you're sipping, it's not going to happen. It's just like an internal signal within your stomach. I don't know what it is. I can't actually explain the mechanism. It's real. I just don't remember. The second thing is that most guys wait until late in the evening. They've had 4 or 5 meals and they've had a lot of sodium and they haven't been drinking enough throughout the day. So now they're really fucking thirsty. So they just pound a ton of water just like an hour or two before bed. Also a no-go. The third thing is that most often I find that people are under-salting their food, especially at night, which can reduce the retention of water or fluid, which sounds favorable, but it's absolutely not, especially in a performance context. So, usually that can help too, increasing sodium in that last meal, but or carbohydrates as well, or carbohydrates in the last meal. But
yeah, I was literally about to add to that, like having a carbohydrate meal before bed actually can help with that simulation of water, as we all know, to store muscle glycogen. I believe it's like 1 gram of muscle glycogen with 3 grams of water, or maybe the other way around. I think it is that 1-to-3 ratio. So having some carbohydrates in your your basic post pre-bed meal can assist with that. But as Colton said, like, space your water intake throughout the day is probably the way to go. Don't fucking scale like a liter before bed. But there's also other factors that can dictate it. Like, for example, if you're in a contest prep and very lean, it typically can be harder to hydrate and water passes through a lot quicker. So you're going to pee a lot anyway. Like, I know I'm getting lean when my pee frequency during the evening increases. That's when I know I'm getting lean. And also it can be indicative for me that I know I need a refeed. So that can also be indicated when my weight goes up and I start peeing more. For me, that's like my sign I need a refeed.
Yeah,
I know I'm basically depleted, and my urination is frequent. Its frequency is increasing. So it's hard to tell, man. But I would say go with those basic guidelines. But again, like I said, if you're super lean, okay, you're in a contest prep or cut the deficit phase, you're just going to pee a lot anyway.
Yeah. I can't. I don't know what your name is. Hey fellas, I have regular blood pressure, 119/67, but my heart rate has an average of 110 when I'm moving around a lot. Okay, well that's different. When I'm moving around a lot at work, my cycle is 40 milligrams test-E. 2 weeks trend. Okay. You're using. Okay, so just to be completely blatantly truthful to you, you're using way too much fucking trend. Not doing anything for you beneficial. 150 milligrams 3 times a week is ridiculous. Drop that down to 70 milligrams. You're going to experience better results, better sleep, and better effects overall, personally. This is my experience with clients and myself. That's a big part of it, because trenbolone is going to stimulate your sympathetic drive so much and just hammer that fucking thing down to the ground. The other thing is considering that you're moving around at work. I don't know what you're doing for work. So if you're lifting weights, like you're lifting big boxes, you're lifting things, or you're running around a lot, or it's a very high stress environment, that kind of makes sense. But a 110, dude, is like, seriously, that's concerning as fuck. Like, if that's your resting heart rate is around there, that's concerning as fuck. And you need to like get that shit figured out ASAP. A lot of the times that looks like hydrating better, mineralizing better, and doing some fucking cardio for real. But
yeah, it could also be the fact that your hematocrit and red blood cell count has been quite elevated by the there we go, high HCT last week. It was 48 on blood work. Or actually, that's if you talk about hematocrit there, that's not high. I wouldn't consider 48 high. Like above 56, I will consider high. But as Colton said, it's more likely from the trend. Especially, are you dosing that? You said 3 times a week, so I'm guessing you're doing infrequent injections, and those spikes and fluctuations can also affect the side effect profile of those drugs. So everything Colton was saying is probably exacerbated by the less frequent administration of the compound. So what I would do personally is drop the trend to like, ideally take it up. But let's say you like, fuck you, Adam, I really want to run it. Okay, fine. 10 milligrams per day, 70 milligrams per week. Okay, you'll probably find that dose, you'd get majority of the benefits from it with significantly less side effects. The EQ, that's 800. Testy, it's also fuck, is a lot of shit. Okay, look, you could be 300 pounds. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, I would just go for daily administrations with these injections, dude. I would drop the train completely, or just do 70 milligrams a week. Your hematocrit is fine if it is 48. Potentially just take some Proviron. Obviously, you're not saying just take Proviron and don't do anything else. No, okay, we need to address the root cause of it, but it could be electrolyte intake. I don't know what your body fat's like, okay, because often guys, I will find that when we have a higher body fat, can increase their A2 levels. Usually you see a correlation with blood pressure, but if you're taking a bunch of blood pressure medications, that can sometimes happen where you're taking the blood pressure medication like ALPs, which cause vasodilation, but then you still have a high heart rate because of all the other compounds that you're on. So as you can see, we're getting quite into the mud here. And there's a lot of it depends on this, it depends on that. But blanket advice, dude, more frequent injections, drop the trend, do some cardio, increase your electrolyte intake, increase your water intake, take some Proviron. Hopefully that assists with it, but without knowing more specifics about your diet, your current blood work, exactly what you're doing, it's kind of hard for us to say specifically what you should do.
Yeah, 1000%. We got a couple more guys, and then we got to go off. This is a good point. This is actually a really good point. Potassium, just making electrolytes more balanced. You'll know this if your serum levels of potassium are on the lower end of normal in a blood test. That could be helpful. But the one thing that was mentioned was the CPAP. The CPAP is something that absolutely cured my nocturia, like massively, to the point where I wasn't even getting up once at night. So I will say, if you do have sleep apnea, and even if you don't, I don't know what it is about the CPAP, but it does seem to make you go unconscious. Like it just seems to not have you wake up to go urinate throughout the night. The issue is that I have a big fat piss in the morning, but I don't really see that as an issue because it's just a really long and awkward urination. But it fucking is nice to get a full night of sleep. So that is a good point. Agreed. All right, peeps. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been an awesome one with lots and lots of questions. As always, if you're catching up on this after the fact, make sure you leave questions down in the comments below. We'll try to do our best to come back and answer those. Check the last week's video. There was none on there, thankfully. So next week, if there is, we'll make sure to get to them. And as always, you guys, Thursday nights, we're going to be here. We'll catch you later. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
See y'all.